Goddamn Grutonium.
Well, you're now unmuted, so congratulations that everybody just heard that. How's everybody doing? Just let me get over to
I'm
this.
quite well. Yourself?
Oh, I think that was a pretty good start to things. So, how's everybody doing? And welcome to the Story Mode podcast. Round three. This is our third time doing this, so we're still kind of crappy at it. But we're getting better, and we are, in fact, learning slowly. We are trying our best here, so. I am blind. You probably know me. If you found this podcast via YouTube, or you're watching live on Twitch, or you are listening on the SoundCloud, or I don't know how else you would have found it. Thank you for tuning into the Story Mode podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss story, plot, and our general thoughts of video games. And today we are discussing a game called To the Moon. If you were watching live, you just saw the trailer. If you're not watching live, then, well, you didn't. So you should watch live.
Sorry.
And I am joined with my good friend Lewis on the left.
Hello.
Like that over there. Yeah, that's right. On
Yeah.
my left.
I'm not gonna decide
I think
my
you're right.
username.
That's
That's a smart move.
LRFLEW. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. So I'm Lewis. I hang around a lot in Blind's chat. I'm also the guy that probably needs to be spending more time on homework, but
Sorry.
yeah.
It's okay. This is more important.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our homework ridden LRFLEW over there, and right below me we have PaganFawks. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's nice to be here. It's cozy.
So sorry that we spelled your name wrong.
Don't worry about it.
If you're
People
watching,
weren't going to subscribe to me after this anyway.
if you're watching this live, then you'll notice that his name is in fact spelled wrong. There's supposed to be a second A in there, I think. But anyways, it's good to have you. He is our last minute guest. Some of you might be wondering, where the hell is Mike? Now, Mike, who is the normal other co-host of this show when he's here, is currently out of country, and rather than skipping another week, we just decided to, why not? Let's just pull somebody in. So I reached
Just
out and
wing it.
I reached out and grabbed a friend of mine who I knew was capable of finishing a game in a week, and brought him on. So, welcome.
It's one of my many valuable skills. Thank you very much.
Beating games quickly.
Yeah, well, being able to finish games at all.
Okay. So once again, we discuss the general plot, our thoughts, and our just what we thought of the game, and we try and go into as much detail as possible while being as nice as possible. I'm generally not very nice though, so unless I like
I didn't
the game.
realize that was a requirement. Otherwise, I would, wouldn't have done last episode.
No, I've got vengeance for you. So up until now, we've done two other games, which are Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons on the second episode, and The Beginner's Guide on the first episode. I highly recommend you go back and listen to those at some point, because they're quite entertaining. So without further ado, I think we're going to get into the general synopsis of the story, and LRFLEW has decided to do that for us, because he loves this game.
Yeah. So To the Moon is a game made by a guy named Kan Gao, also known as Reeves. And so he made To the Moon, which is a game about two scientists from the Sigmund Corporation called Dr. Eva Rosaline and Dr. Neil Watts. So they are tasked with fulfilling the lifelong dream of the dying Johnny Wiles. Johnny wants to go to the moon, although he doesn't know why. The doctors insert themselves into an interactive compilation of his memories and traverse backwards through his life via mementos. With each leap to an important moment in Johnny's memories, they learn more about him and what brought him to his current position in life, including his largely unhappy marriage to his childhood sweetheart, River. Upon reaching his childhood, the doctors attempt to insert his desire to go to the moon. Supposedly, Johnny's mind would create new memories based on that desire, and Johnny would die believing he lived without any regrets. However, Johnny's mind does not create the new memories as planned, so Dr. Watts and Dr. Rosaline must solve the problem to fulfill Johnny's dying wish of going to the moon.
Okay. So this is a spoiler cast to everybody here. So, LRFLEW, if you could just continue right on until the end and just give us a basic synopsis up until the end of the story, because we will be spoiling the entire story. So if you haven't played this game yet, I'm sorry, but you're about to hear everything that's going to happen.
Okay. All right, so continuing on. Eventually, it is revealed that Johnny and River met as children at a carnival. They had looked at the night sky and made up a constellation, a rabbit with the moon as its belly. The two agreed to meet the exact same place the following year, with Johnny promising that, should he forget or get lost, the two would, quote, regroup on the moon. That night, Johnny gives River a toy platypus, which River treasures for the rest of her life. Shortly after, Johnny's twin brother Joey was killed in an accident. Johnny's mother gave him beta blockers to induce memory loss of the tragic event, also causing him to forget his first encounter with River. He later happens to meet her again and eventually marry her, and River only realized later on that he had forgot their meeting at the carnival. Ahead a little bit. River did not tell Johnny directly about their first meeting. Instead, she tries to indirectly jostle his memories by cutting her hair and crafting paper bunnies, including a dual-colored one representing the constellation they made up during their first encounter, combined with blue and yellow dress she wore on their wedding. River was unable to make Johnny remember before she died, and Johnny was left with a lingering guilt and an inexplicable desire to go to the moon. That's it.
Not bad. So, does anybody have anything they want to say initially?
I love this game. Like, I try to keep track of about 3 games that are my favorite games. This is squarely in the top 3.
Why?
You know, I really liked the emotion to the story. I mean, you talked about last week that Brothers was like the only game that had made you cry. Well, that was the game for me. Like, I cried on an airplane, you know, just in the middle of an airplane because of this game.
But the writing is terrible. It's god awful, man. The entire game from end to end has no idea what the hell it wants to be. It doesn't. The writing slips from serious to dumb, and the humor is dry and bland. It never really goes anywhere. It just kind of drags along, and then tripping over different ideas of things like depression and mental disorders, which it never fills you in on. And I spent the first 3 hours of that game just kind of craning my brain going, oh god, I have to finish this thing, until it turned into some kind of sappy tosh that just sorted itself out in the end. Like, well, what about this game is entertaining? What about this game is fun? I don't like... Okay. No, I'm okay. I'm gonna sit here and talk for a bit while you guys talk.
I guess what I'm gonna say, as far as my feelings go, I don't feel quite as strongly about it as either of you guys do. I have to say I came out of it ultimately with a positive experience, but I can definitely see where a lot of Blind's concerns come from. The writing, while definitely grasping for emotions and having some decent ideas, plods around a little bit too long for me. And ultimately, it seemed like it was trying too hard to tie itself together at the end when it should have spent more time focusing on the story itself.
I mean, it was cute. It was.
Yeah, it was
and
cute.
The ending was heartwarming, but
it's not the be-all, end-all everybody says it is.
Yeah, and I don't know about you two, but I found the story incredibly predictable. And it not only drew from things like, God, what's the name of that movie? Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Eternal Sunshine of a really long name that I always like to forget. That, it drew from that movie heavily. And...
Yeah, I mean, Reeves has said before that that movie was a huge inspiration for the game.
He literally just cloned the storyline. That's like, have you read Aragon? The book's Aragon.
Aragon? No,
okay,
not that I remember at least.
They're not great, okay? They're like kids' fantasy novels. I read the first one when I was a little bit younger and watched the movie, and it was tosh awful. I read that book and thought about it for a little bit, and then I went and read up on it, and literally the rest of them follow the storyline of Star Wars. From end to end. In a fantasy setting, but instead of Jedi, they ride dragons. And this is what that felt like to me. And it's
I feel like I know the book series you're talking about, but I don't know for sure.
They're called Aragon.
Did they have dragon faces on the cover or something?
Yes.
Then I read that series.
The first dragon's blue, the second one's red, I think.
And the next one's green, yeah.
Yeah. They were written by like a 14-year-old or something. Anyways.
Yeah.
Hence why they followed Star Wars. But it's like, I like the themes that this game takes, okay? But my initial impressions, like the first 3 minutes of this game was, holy, I can't take the controls. Okay, I tried using the keyboard controls, and it did this thing where I was like, initial impressions are a very big deal in a game like this, right? I didn't like using the point and click controls because I was on a laptop, and I think that's kind of how the game was meant to be played, was point and click. I think, which is what I ended up doing. I ended up fishing out the wireless mouse I had and sticking it on a desk and using that. But I was trying to use the arrow keys, and it does this thing where like you push the arrow key down and your character starts to move forward, and then you let go and it keeps moving forward for a few seconds.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's on a grid, so
I can see the fury.
That can kill.
See it.
That can kill a game for me. And not only did it infuriate me, but infuriated my girlfriend. She was like unable to play it. And she's like, "No, you're playing this game." She did the puzzles, because when you travel to a different memory, you have to do a little puzzle. And I was like, "What?" I didn't like them. So I gave her the laptop and let her do this. So yeah, no, like for me, if I didn't have to play this game for this show, the controls would have I wouldn't have done
No,
it.
you can have the most beautifully well told story that, brings tears to the eyes of the humans everywhere, and, babies stop crying, and it brings about world peace. But if you frame it in a game where the control scheme is so bad that nobody's going to want to play to the end, it doesn't matter how good your story is.
I want a
There
second.
needs to be something
I can
else.
understand that, but to me, the controls weren't a barrier of entry. I mean, it definitely is meant to be played more point and click, but it's not a game that requires fast input. It's pretty simple to do with a trackpad.
Yeah, but it's a very story-paced game, right? So it's what you're trying to do. You're like, okay, so I'm going through this, and if I just kind of want to play with the arrow keys and I don't want to be clicking things, it's not a very good control scheme. That, and another thing, I found the game became incredibly pixel hunty, especially in some of the around the middle point of the game when you're surfing through different memories and looking into different things that are happening, and because the way you travel through the memories in this game is you have to gather a certain number of mementos. I think it's 5, if I remember correctly. And mementos are can be literally anything within the world itself. So it could be a lamp, it could be a stuffed duck, it could be a rock. Like, you don't know what it is, and everything.
Well, more importantly, it's something related to the character.
Yes,
but yeah, it could be in theory anything in the scene.
Yes. And so you're looking around, and it becomes incredibly pixel hunty. And there was a couple times when I needed one more memento to get back, and I walked around for like 5 minutes with this terrible control scheme. Just like, and then I take the trackpad on the laptop or the mouse, and I just like cycle through everything on the screen. Like, I literally had to pull out 90s point and click game tactics for this game, just pixel hunting, and it killed it. It completely killed it. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the comedic writing. Like, if someone says "holy cucumbers" and that's the first line they say, I'm probably going to stop reading because that is dumb. I'm sorry. And if you're going to try and tackle something that's adult or serious or something with a darker theme, try and take that theme and run with it. Put your writing into that theme as well. Don't have like this weird childish writing which just screws it up. And I don't know. Like, I think you guys know my opinion, so I kind of want to hear what you guys have to say about this game.
Well, first and foremost, the entire time you're saying that, all I can think and running through my head is Adam Sandler Pixels. Adam Sandler Pixels.
I haven't seen that movie.
It's everything that you hated and that you just described in an Adam Sandler movie. Like,
what?
It's indecisive tone and childish writing and terrible jokes and.
Oh, you're talking about the plot of Pixels.
Yeah,
we need to do an episode on Pixels. That would be fun. Go on.
But no, I guess for me, you one of the things LRFLEW said was that the controls to them weren't a barrier to entry. I suppose it wouldn't be a barrier to entry, but what it was is, imagine for a moment that you're walking down the street, somebody says, "Hey, we're having an open house. We have hot dogs. Come have hot dogs." And you went, "All right, I'm hungry. I'll grab hot dogs. Those hot dogs look really good." And then you walk in, and the door's open. There's no barrier to entry. But you go to pick up the hot dog, and it's covered in axle grease. That's what the controls in this like are to me. Like, it's just, you can start it, but it handles terribly. And I mean, I try to keep my thoughts for the controls in the story a little bit separate, because I feel that the gameplay and the narrative should be judged separately before together. But I hated the way this game controlled. I hated it so much. Hated it.
Okay, so I'm not the only person who has that opinion.
No, no, no,
That
no,
kind of
no.
that relaxes
When
me a
you
little
asked
bit.
me to play it, I was like, "Oh, this looks good," and then I tried it, and I'm like, "This feels horrible."
Is let's think about this for a second. Does this game run in RPG Maker?
It
It
was
looks
made
like
in
it's
RPG Maker.
Is
Yeah.
it an RPG Maker?
RPG
game?
Maker
It is
XP.
RPG Maker.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
Because I've made RPG Maker games and they never controlled like that. They've always been snappy. So I don't know what he did.
Yeah,
to
no,
it.
you've got to specifically go after that. That's not something that happens by accident.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were gonna say
I
something?
mean, this was definitely a game where you could tell the gameplay was put second before the story. And I mean, the reason I like it is not because of the controls or the gameplay. The controls certainly had some issues, and the gameplay had some issues, but the story to me was really well told. One thing I wanted to quickly address is you had mentioned tone, that you it felt like the game was jumping between tones too much, and to me, I didn't see that as a bad thing. Like, the idea was you couldn't understand the emotional lows. You couldn't have those sad moments without having some sort of lighthearted, albeit childish humor thrown in there, something to just sort of change the mood, not make it just this consistent dread.
Well, I mean, I'll certainly submit that sometimes having positive moments to contrast with the negative moments, and like you said, the emotional highs and lows is important. But when you have to focus on an overall tone for a game, and I mean overall, I mean over the course of the entire experience, there needs to be more of one than the other. If it's going to be heartwarming, it needs to, be dark and then heartwarming. If it's going to be, if it's going to be happy, it needs to have the sad moments to contrast it. That's fine. But this game was all over the place, and I would almost even call it tone deaf.
Another thing that I would I don't want to hate on the game for this, but the game did actually have something that really interested me in the first hour and a half, and this is related to his wife, River. They keep bringing up that she has a mental disorder, and then that just kind of vanishes. And that was the interesting part of the game for me for the first hour and a half, 2 hours, when it was very focused on like kind of the relationship between Johnny and the other character as the two doctors are going back through his memories to just like see what's going on. They keep bringing up that, oh yeah, no, River has a mental disorder. What the hell was wrong with River? Where did that go?
Did you not figure it out?
No.
Yeah, did you not get that?
That just like went right over my head.
Okay, first off,
go ahead.
you should be able to tell just from context clues that it's autism spectrum disorder.
How?
But more specifically, there's actually a very subtle hint at what it exactly is, which is, let's see if I could find it in the notes. Yeah.
I went digging through
name
that.
drop.
What?
They name drop in the doctor scene. The doctor hands River a book and says it's from a guy named Tony Atwood. If you go into Wikipedia and look him up, like the very first sentence says that he writes books on Asperger's, specifically
Why on
Asperger's.
earth would I have to go into Wikipedia to find out a part of a plot of a game?
Well, the thing is, it's just a piece of it's set dressing. It's a background detail.
It's not. It wasn't a background detail.
Besides, from context clues, you
They
should
just
be
did
able
a
to
name
figure out
drop
it's
for a real
autism
person.
spectrum
I
at
have
the
a very
least.
autistic cousin. It was not obvious.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into autism specifically, but I have two autistic cousins, and they manifest it in very different ways.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can't really standardize it that way, but I did pick up on it that I didn't get Asperger's right away, but I did pick up on the fact that she had an autism spectrum disorder throughout the game.
I figured it was something like that, but I kind of wish that they would just like explain what that was instead of just like hinting at it and being like, "Oh, she feels bad," or "Oh, she's different," or "Oh, she's this." Just fucking say it. Damn it! Stop it! There's so many things that irritated me about this game. Like it was.
Don't have
Man.
any tolerance for that background storytelling, Air.
You know what almost actually made me quit this game and not finish it?
What?
Was the sequence very close to the end when they're making the decision whether or not to change all of his memories, erase everything, and rewrite his entire life. And fucking zombies appear.
Okay, yeah, I could totally get that.
I actually paused the game for 10 minutes and turned on Hell's Kitchen because I couldn't fucking take it. It was just, no. I sat on my couch in my hotel room and I just watched some cooking channel and it was lovely. And then I went back to the game.
Didn't
and I
watch
beat
a
it.
show about kittens?
No, that show wasn't on, unfortunately.
Oh.
I love that show. It was a beautiful show. Anyways, but yeah, no, that
I don't know. That didn't bother me, but I don't know. I can't really defend that.
I think it bothered me more because it felt like a plot hole. I mean, I'm not the sort of I'm the exact opposite kind of person who wants to go looking on the internet for things unless like I'm super invested in something and you've got me with either maybe your writing or your world, or it's like, oh, here is a huge or here's like a huge universe that you want to explore, but you need more information, so you go looking for other people's ideas, like say Dark Souls, for example. Something like that would probably make me want, yeah, and Pagan's happy, and something like that would probably make me want to go and look for more. That would make me, okay, this is interesting. But that wasn't there for this game. This was a Inception-esque Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind thing.
Mess.
Made in RPG Maker. And I'm not going to go look at it. I just want you to spell it out for me. Just write it out. Make it blatant. Maybe even have the two characters have a conversation about it. Maybe go back to that memory where he learned that she has some sort of mental disorder.
Well, I mean, they kind of do. And that brings up something I wanted to address, which is this game does something I've only seen a few times, but I've really liked every time I've seen it, which is they tell a story in reverse. They started with him on his deathbed and then go backwards in time.
You should watch Vantage Point.
I probably should.
It's a really good movie. Vantage Point is a really good movie. It's terrible the second time, though. Don't watch it the second time.
And I think that's where a lot of, at least for me, where the interest came in, because brains are really good at cause and effect. You give it a cause and it will figure out what the effect is. But you give it an effect and it has a much more difficult time figuring out the cause of that, which allows them to create these sort of small mysteries. You start at a certain time and something happens, like, why did that happen? And then you go back one or two memories and it explains why it happened. They're able to kind of build the story in reverse.
I'm going to pick up something from chat real quick. Dead One is just pointing out, he's like, I've been told I have light autism and I had no idea what it was until you just said it now. So, I mean, if I'm going to have to go, like, I kind of agree with that. It's like, if you're going to be super vague about something, maybe later on just disclose it. I mean, this game is super vague about so many things. And to me, that was what the game was about for the first half, was him, like, learning about his wife until at the very end when it's like, oh, it's not. Okay. Because the whole...
Well, I mean... Oh, go on.
Because the whole, like, oh, she's not our client. We're not going to look into her because she's not our client. I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to... There's something we're gonna find out something interesting about her wife, and then that whole character, the whole character just kind of fell away and disappeared, and it's like, oh, she's an astronaut now. What?
Somehow.
What?
I actually do agree on you. On one point, you brought up Dark Souls, and I'm not gonna harp on about that, despite my feelings on that being pretty well known. You are absolutely right. Whereas a game like that tells its story through the environments, the backgrounds. All that other stuff. It tells it without telling you. I feel like To the Moon tries something similar but doesn't succeed. And I mean, if you're enough into a game, you will look on the internet to find out lore, trivia. That's why places like Did You Know Gaming and, Did You Know Movies and stuff like that exist, because people are interested in knowing that if your product is good enough. But I just don't feel To the Moon really did a good enough job setting up those hooks to make people interested to justify the amount of background storytelling that it has.
Yeah, I mean, when you refer to environmental storytelling, I also found the environments rather difficult to traverse. At least with me and my eyesight. I know my girlfriend was like, "Oh, go that way," but like, I'm like looking at this and I see this flat plane with like, this might just be a limitation of the RPG Maker engine, but it might also just be the color palette they chose. I found it really difficult to get around the mansion in a few cases, and I couldn't see obstacles and I couldn't figure out what was where in the environment. So that might just be bad level design or just me with bad eyesight. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the controls real quick, because when I had first played it, I switched actually back and forth from trackpad to keyboard, usually walking around longer distances with the keyboard and, finding things to interact with the mouse. And one of the things I kept running into is that there would be rocks that was maybe a few shades lighter, a few shades darker, that would completely impede your path. It's not obvious, and it's no more contrast than the stuff that you can walk through. So it did have some issues with conveyance in terms of its environments.
Yeah, I think that maybe it was just the color palette they chose. It was a lot of dark colors, a lot of dark browns, a lot of dark blacks. And there's like this one point in the game when you get like either through a clear memory or something, or it like switches to the real world where it's suddenly all bright and colorful. It's like, oh, this is lovely, this is beautiful, and then it goes right back to being all drab.
I was gonna say, why wasn't it like that the whole game? Really,
Yeah,
why couldn't you have had that expressive, colorful style? I would have been way more happy to play through that than brown and gray and black.
And I know that LRFLEW over here stated explicitly before this podcast that he kind of wanted to keep Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons out of this because they're both very emotional games.
Yeah.
Brothers is colorful, pretty, and nice to look at. And
it tells a good story.
I mean, it tells another very emotional story about, people dying, and it's supposed to make you feel lost and supposed to make you feel terrible. But it's colorful until the very end. Like, I think that the game's tone would have fit itself a lot more if it wasn't all drab, dark, and looked like the place was about to fall down, and it didn't look like it was about to jump shock you. Like, there's a few points in that game when I thought it was going to turn into a horror game.
You were expecting a jump scare right out of there?
No, I was expecting them. Like, there were points in that game when I was literally thinking, okay, where's the ghost gonna pop out of? Because this is just so dark, and there's like these weird creepy elements and this ominous music, and it's like, and the character's talking about cucumbers. That is the weirdest tone shift I've ever encountered in a video game.
Like I said, I very much
They usually kept the musical tones consistent with the dialogue. I found
the first point when you find all the folded rabbits, when they're like, oh, we're going to take you into the funny room now, the dialogue was pretty messed up. Also, I wanted to kill those kids. Like, those kids at the beginning were the most annoying piece of shit in the world. Basically, in general, I hated Dr. Watts. Okay? The other doctor was okay. I could deal with her. Her writing was fine. But Dr. Watts' writing was the most insufferable crap I've ever encountered in the world, especially when they do just start swearing at the end. It's like, you've been saying cucumbers up until now, and now you're just going to drop an F-bomb? Okay.
Well, to be fair, they use there's a fancy word for it, but they technically sort of censor it.
But they use an @ symbol. Okay. It was like hashtag @ symbol $% I think. So it's like, I don't know. I'm sorry to just come in here with just this overwhelmingly negative, and I'm going to try and look for something positive in this game for me, something that I enjoyed, and something that I really did enjoy was the last 5 minutes. The last 5 minutes were lovely. It was...
The last 5 minutes is because it was finally over?
No, the last 5 minutes were genuinely good. The whole point in the end, once you've, spoiler alert, so successfully changed his memories, gone through his entire life, and made him think that he went to the moon as an astronaut. And he's like, and you're going through NASA, or his envision of NASA, slowly from the bottom to the top, and just going up there's an elevator that you go up slowly, and on each level there's some things you need to do and some people that you can talk to. That whole point in the game was incredibly enjoyable. It was well written. It was nice to look at. The art was good. But the rest of it, even like the lead up, I mean, the other interesting part of the game for me was the plot twist, which is, oh, he has a twin. That's why everything in his brain is screwed up. Because he has a twin, and his twin died, and then they blocked out his memory. So he remembers some things about his twin, and he thinks they're him, and it's like, okay, that part was interesting, because that I didn't see coming. But literally everything else, especially post that point, I predicted. I was like, okay, what's going to happen here is they're going to go back in time, they're going to change his memories, he's going to meet up with his future wife, they're going to save his brother's going to stay alive in his memories, and then he's going to go to the moon. Literally from that point, like the second his brother got hit by the car. I think I was supposed to be bawling at that point. Judging by the way the game was treating it, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to keel over and cry now. But I didn't. It was like, oh, that happened because the
I
game
feel
was...
no connection to these characters, so I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, first time I played it, didn't cry at that scene, but second time I did. I will say that it's a
Why?
game that I felt like was better the second time,
I feel
even
like
though
if-
I really liked it the first time.
I feel like if I played it a second time, I would break my monitor.
Yeah, but
With my
um,
keyboard.
you did sort of say like that was the twist. That wasn't the twist for me. That wasn't the moment that I thought was the most emotionally charged my first time through.
Was a twist.
What a
True, no,
twist.
but the other twist, the one that happened shortly after that with River. I mean, this game made me cry over a toy platypus. Like, don't give me that look.
Okay, I'll be nice.
I don't cry, so
I don't dream. But I don't know. I think that was the biggest twist for me. Like, what twist are you referring to with River? Because I went right over my head.
Specifically at the end, at the carnival, when Johnny runs off and ends up meeting River kind of in the middle of this, cliffside, basically. And so they're looking up in the sky, and they find the bunny constellation with the moon as the belly. And that kind of reveals why River was having that fascination with the rabbits later on. And the whole lighthouses, too, that she says, I think all the stars are lighthouses, and someday I'm going to befriend one of them. And she does. She befriends Anya. And then, Johnny gives River the toy platypus that you see her with the entire game. And it sort of, suddenly everything falls into place. It puts everything that happened before into context.
Well, earlier on, I think the whole concept of the lighthouse was just very weird. And that also ties back into the narrative of, she's mentally handicapped. But again, they didn't explicitly explain that part, so that was just a plot hole for me. But that whole point at the beginning when she's talking to the lighthouse, because for those of you who haven't played the game, behind their house is their big house is this pretty lighthouse, which was abandoned at the beginning of the game. And she's talking to it like a person. And that I thought was going to tie into her plot as like, oh, this is who she is, But that was then just like left for so long. I was like, well, that's bloody weird. And then when I finally go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
When I got to that point when they're looking up in the sky and she's like, oh, I think they're all lighthouses. I was like, oh, you're still really weird. It didn't it didn't resonate at all. It just kind of went, boing. Okay.
I will say definitely this game feels to get left a lot on the cutting room floor. It feels like there's a lot of meat that could have been added to the story that would have made it more whole, complete, and would have told it better if they just left some details in or expressed some things a little more clearly. I guess it really comes down to for me is at the end of the day, did I like the story? Do I feel the story made sense? And would I go out of my way to play this already knowing the story? The story was okay. It was poorly told, and I probably wouldn't play it again.
I think that's the nicest way that you could put my argument. I'm not very good at being nice when I don't like something. I'm sorry.
No, it's that's why I'm here. It's just to keep everything. I'm the middleman today.
That's nice. You're good at that.
Yeah.
I mean, another inconsistency that I can think of is there's a scene when there's a dramatic moment and they zoom in on this blurry pixelated pixel art. Okay? And you just see like this full screen, essentially, not even re-rendered, just like zoomed in version of an RPG Maker sprite. And it is the ugliest, dumbest looking thing in the world. And it's like, well, this is supposed to be emotional.
But
And
all
then-
I can think of is how bad this resolution is.
Yeah, no, like literally, my girlfriend's sitting next to me and she just looks at me and she says, that is, wow, they could have like re-rendered that.
Yeah, they could have like added some detail.
Yeah,
Or...
like it's just blurry.
I mean, that seemed, I
Like,
do admit, that seemed really out of place considering that they had hand-drawn,
yeah, because like
art
a
later
minute,
on.
yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like a minute, like not even 10 minutes later in the game, you see like this beautiful, well, not like adequate hand-drawn art that fits the game nicely. It's weird because the art seemingly gets better. The first time you see the hand-drawn art, which is in the scene where Johnny meets up with River at the carnival, I think that's the first time you see the hand-drawn art. It looks kind of okay, but then by the end of the hand-drawn art, it all looks really good. So I was really confused by that. Maybe he's just not very good at drawing people. I think that the spaceship stuff looked amazing. I really like the artwork of the space shuttle when it's taking off. That stuff's really cool looking. Yeah, but like it was just kind of weirdly out of place. It's like, okay, just like give us a face or something. Maybe take a picture of yourself or put a cap on it. Like it's ugly. Just cover it with something, please. Put some
Here, just take this brown paper bag.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why zoom in on your nice-looking sprite, which looks nice because it's small, right? You take a picture and you zoom in on it. It's
built for the resolution we're displaying it at.
And I know
it's not built for like it's not built for that.
And I know that you can use. I know that you can do that in RPG Maker because I've used RPG Maker. So.
I was looking around on my desk for to make a good comparison. I think I found something that this doesn't look too bad, but this. I knew I had Pixel Mario for a reason.
I almost bought that once. I think what we should do is I think we've kind of ran over this rabbit enough. If you play the game, you'll understand.
I like how you didn't go like kicking a horse, ran over the rabbit.
Yeah, I think we've killed this rabbit enough times.
It's eloquent.
Like the one at Johnny and River's wedding.
And the one that they run over the big, or no, that's a squirrel that they run over at the beginning of the
game. Yeah, there's a dead squirrel.
That's another thing now that I think about it that reminds me of the weird tones of this game because there's roadkill throughout the entire game, and that is like a running trend that just continues on throughout the entire game and is actually like a plot point in a few cases because it's connected to the rabbit and the moon. Anyways,
yeah.
That sounds like a poem: "The Rabbit and the Moon and the Roadkill."
Oh dear.
There once was a rabbit on the moon.
Oh god, and it got hit by a car at the end. Yeah, my amazing poetry. There you go. But no, like, it's like that ominous tone. Like, roadkill's not a pretty thing, and then like the bouncy, happy dialogue around that. And then like, oh yeah, no, this is a dead person, and oh yeah, no, we're looking around this, or not dead person, but person who's dying, and now we're looking around their house. Oh, and I'm being all sarcastic and funny. Anyways, I think that we've dashed...
it's interesting because there's a lot of this game that acts as contrast, kind of the darker story of Johnny and River versus the more lighthearted story of Eve and Neil. But even given that, like, they oftentimes kind of strike this idea of opposites, that Eve and Neil are very different. In fact, they go out the way to say that Eve is, not a night person and Neil is, that, Neil tends to take his job more lightheartedly, whereas Eve is way more strictly, to the job title. And there's definitely a theme going on there.
Yeah, but it's painful. Regardless of whether they're aiming for a theme or not, the writing to me comes across as painful and hard to read. I understand why people love this game. I know that this game kind of has a very positive resonance towards it, and I get it. I totally get it. But at the same time, for me, the controls and the writing of the first 2 hours completely nuked the entire game for me. And the look of the game. Like, it's drab, it's not fun to look at, the writing wasn't that interesting. There was some interesting elements in there, but I personally couldn't take it. And for other people, it comes across as an incredibly emotional journey through somebody's mind and, like, rewriting the memories of a dying man, which is a very interesting story on the outside. It really is. But I just personally couldn't deal with it. It wasn't something that I could enjoy. If the world was pretty, like if it was nice to look at, because, you could take a sad story and put it in a beautiful world, and it's been done many, many times. And
Witness. Pardon?
Sure. I mean, take a like I haven't finished that game yet, but sure. Take a beautiful world and put a sad story to it, and then maybe twist it up at the end and make it go dark. Or, for example, they could have used when his little brother died, or when things really do start to go south towards the latter half of the game. You could do that. Or like when they hit the beta blockers in his memories, when they're trying to go back and they can't go back any further because it's just a black wall. They could have done a tone shift, and that would have been powerful. That would have been really powerful, and that would have been interesting. Instead of, it's dark and dreary with one cheery character and dark and dreary. That's like taking a cartoon character and putting it in a horror film. It doesn't
You gotta
fit.
admit, that'd be really funny to watch.
I would watch that movie. You know, put Bugs Bunny into Saw. I would watch that.
Who killed Roger Rabbit?
No.
Oh, man.
But to sort of wrap up my thoughts about the game, because we're getting close to an hour now, I think.
Yeah, something like that. We got a bit of time left.
Yeah. I would not have played through the game to the end if I hadn't been doing it for this reason. I would have started it, I would have gotten maybe 2 or 3 hours in, and then would have gone, no, that's all. And I would never have even seen the end. I feel the end was not worth what it took to get there.
Sorry, I'm Googling something.
No problem. Thought you might have been replying to Lewd.
No, I'm just... You two talk about stuff. I want to find something.
Alright, no worries.
I feel like I have to defend my position here.
Go ahead.
But I don't know. It's hard to defend it when the argument is I didn't like it. I mean, all I can really say...
it's not just I didn't like it, it's I didn't like it and here's why. I mean, ultimately, whether or not you enjoy something is subject to personal opinion. That's why we have reviews, that's why we even have the StoryMode podcast, is to talk about opinions, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, if you feel the need to defend your position, just in your opinion, what you like about it. It doesn't have to contradict his points, it just has to be, you know, why you like it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of weird things. Like, you know, you're saying you don't like the writing. Well, I actually really liked it. You know, you're saying you don't like how the tone shifts. I really liked it. I think they did a good job of framing it in such a way that they could keep that kind of darker tone of the main story with Johnny and River and still keep this lighthearted tone of the framing narrative with Eva and Neil. I don't know. I mean, I really liked where the story went. I thought it told a really good story and did a good job of keeping you on your keeping you on your toes emotionally. So,
I think it was like as you said, it was an interesting story, but I find it, to me, there was too many walls I had to climb over to enjoy an interesting story. And every single wall was higher than the one before. The first one was the controls right off the bat. Couldn't handle it. Second one was the visual presentation of the game. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't see where I was going half the time. Again, that might just be me being unable to see shit, but, you know, that's just me. I have that issue with games sometimes. I actually had a similar issue with Renegade Ops, oddly enough, which PaganFawks has played. Half the time I have no idea where I'm driving, but that's okay because everything explodes. Quite literally.
Who needs to see the path? You just blow one up.
Yeah. So like I have that issue in games, is what I'm trying to say. I have run into that issue before where I genuinely can't see where I'm going, and so that made it really hard for me. And then just the childish writing to me didn't fit. And if the world looked prettier, in my opinion, if the controls were tight and snappy, even if like I still had to use the mouse to mouse around, that would be fine as long as the character would move the way I'd expected it to. I don't want to get stuck on stairs and then be like, oh, now I need to watch a 2-second animation of the character slowly walking up these stairs just so I can slowly walk back down the stairs so I can watch, you know? I mean, again, that might be limitations of the RPG Maker engine, but maybe then you shouldn't put your cute story into the RPG Maker engine. Because, newsflash, the RPG Maker engine is kind of limited. It's kind of shit, all things considered. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
if we're talking
I
about the
agree
engine,
that I think the engine was an odd choice for the game.
well, even just the fact that it was RPG Maker XP. I mean, it's a very old engine, even
was
for
it really
RPG Maker.
XP?
Yeah, it's XP. I looked it up before the podcast. It's made in XP.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like,
So I'm looking at the limitations of that game. I mean, it's not shocking that there was only so much you could do, but it's weird it wouldn't have been made in another engine. Like, it would have probably been less difficult to do in a better engine.
and probably would have played better too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think it's partly my just inherent dislike for RPG Maker games, and that might have been because my cousin forced me to play half a dozen that he made when he was younger. Um, I mean, I've played some pretty good RPG Maker games in my time. Trying to think of
I
any.
enjoyed Corpse Party.
I enjoyed that the one about running away from a demon, something Oni.
Aoni?
Is that the name of it?
I think it's Aoni.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That thing was scary as shit, and that was an RPG Maker game.
It was
So
Ao or Ioni. I don't remember which one, but
I think there was like more than one. But what I want to do now is I want to just discuss the story. So forget the game, okay? Forget all of the issues that me and PaganFawks had with the game itself. Let's just talk about the story because we are called Story
Right.
Mode and we have 10 minutes left here. LRFLEW, because you, this is the game that you love. I want you to take the latter half of the game. So let's say like from about where you hit the beta blockers till the end of the game. Just give us a real quick synopsis of that, and let's just discuss that. Let's just talk about the story. Let's see if we can find some things that interest us. Because I know that you have a pile of notes again.
Sure, yeah.
I do too. They're just all in text on my computer.
Trying to figure out where that part starts. Yeah, right here. Because it does actually say Act 2 at about that point, which is really weird in my opinion.
And Act 2 is really short.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
45
certainly
minutes.
not half, but most second acts aren't. Anyways, so they... My notes are not going to work for this. I don't know what fell. Sorry. Okay, I'll just go off of memory. So at that second act, you end up at the beta blockers, and the doctors realize they can't go back any further, so they decide to try to initiate the sequence.
Which is rewriting his entire memory. And
Yeah.
destroying everything that he had and building him a new memory, which is hopefully happy.
Yeah. And they explain kind of early on in the game that what they have to do is take the passion, that desire of him, in this case, wanting to go to the moon, and take it from him at that older age and bring it back to when he was a child so that he has that all the way forward, and that passion's supposed to bring it through. So they try to do that. They take over, there's sort of this link connection thing that happens, and they bring back this passion, and then they go back to see what has changed, and nothing changed. And so they think, well, we sent the stuff over, maybe we just need to trigger it. And so there's this whole sequence where they're trying to go back through the memories and trying to trigger a change, and nothing seems to be happening. Eventually, they decide to basically call it a break. They leave the machine for a little while Neil calls corporate, essentially, and realizes that, he had the beta blockers. So they figure out a way past the beta blockers. And that's where we get the big scene with Johnny's brother. And you see that
when we go all the way back to him being a little kid rather than being like a teenager.
Yeah, because the farthest you can get back before the beta blockers was about a teenager age, but then now that we got past it, he's a kid, and you see that his brother died, and that was the reason why he got the beta blockers. And they go back a little bit further to the carnival scene, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there with the idea like Joey being the more the favorite son between the two twins, and a whole bunch of weird stuff like that. And so Johnny ends up running off into the woods, ends up meeting up with River. They have that really nice conversation I described before, and Eve basically realizes what she has to do. She has to get rid of River from that kind of early age so that his passion to go for the moon continues on through. And so she basically tries to go do that while Neil tries to stop her from doing that. And there's this really big, long action scene
Which was
She ends up
insufferable.
succeeding.
Go on. Sorry, I'm not supposed to talk about gameplay.
uh, let's see. I'm trying to remember how exactly this goes. Um, and so, of course, Eve succeeds, gets rid of River from the early memories, and ends up replacing her with Joey, the brother. So the brother stays alive. And you get this really interesting montage of it going forward in time, of basically him aspiring to be an astronaut, having all this passion, his brother doing successful as a writer. Joey ends up going to NASA as an astronaut. There's a sequence there where you go through NASA, and then eventually you realize that, Eve keeps kind of saying, like, I thought she'd be here. And eventually it does work out that River, in Johnny's mind, would end up being another astronaut in kind of the same group as him. And so the game ends on the big shuttle scene where they end up actually going up towards the moon. Johnny and River.
Okay. So we've hit the end of the game, and then they hold hands, and it's all aw. And then the game sums itself up, or at least the story of the game sums itself up with another cheesy one-liner from one of the characters, which is, well, how did that all happen? And it's like, well, I don't know. It was just some sort of, I'm trying to think of the exact words they used. Cheesy posh that just kind of sorted itself out.
Yeah.
Which is not the exact quote, but it's about as well as I remember it. Pretty much the same effect of what one of the main characters says. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of how I felt about that entire section of the game.
Yeah.
What a really good summary of how I feel.
Yeah, no, like it was actually hilarious. I burst out laughing, and I was crying laughing because of that one line. It's like, well, you just described how I feel about this entire goddamn game.
Yeah.
But it. So that ending sequence to me feels not only incredibly similar to Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, which, as you said, he drew inspiration from, clearly, but it also, like, I'm trying to pick it apart here, and I really can't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just doing something wrong. What do you guys have to say about that whole chunk of the game, just the ending of it in general? Like, your thoughts? How did it make you feel?
It didn't.
I mean,
I wish I could
argue
say something more about it. I didn't connect with the characters. I didn't feel for their motivations, and it's not because I'm heartless or something like that. I just, having played through the whole game and observed the story and paid attention to the details, I didn't feel like it did a good enough job keeping me interested in the characters to care about what happened to them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get that.
But it's just personal opinion, right? So,
I mean, go on.
Real quick, I'll say I can't really disagree in terms of the ending. That, to me, the biggest, the best moment of the game was the twist, from, the kind of that beginning of Act 2 to basically the end of the carnival scene. And that everything after that was not so much bad, but just not as interesting. But that being said, you brought up that you didn't really feel like you related to the characters. And that's funny, because that's exactly what I said about Brothers. That I couldn't get into Brothers, and I didn't feel the emotional connection to Brothers, because I couldn't get into the characters. For me, I got into To the Moon. I really liked the characters. I really felt like I could sympathize and empathize with them.
I almost want to say this is episode 2, part 2.
Yeah.
No, okay, so this is why I like Brothers, okay? The two little characters in Brothers are these two little adorable dudes that don't really speak English. In fact, they don't really speak anything. They kind of blab at each other and yell at each other, which is great. And they're adorable. And they're cute. And it's a pretty world. And you control them, and you're holding them all the time, and you're running around with them, and you're trying not to trip over each other and fall off the world, because that happens. And then they die. And then you're like, damn it! And then you respawn, which is fine. So I felt attached to those characters because it controlled well, once you figured out the controls, because it's a weird control scheme, but once you wrap your hand around it, I found it fine.
Once you stop getting your thumbs mixed up. Right?
Yeah, once you stop tripping thumbs. Like, I actually swapped thumbs at one point. That never play a controller upside down. Like, I flipped my controller upside down and started playing it like that. get connected to a character that moves well and that is interesting. The characters in this game I not only disliked, but kind of wanted to hurt. I wanted to hit Watts a number of times, just from his sarcastic humor, which I didn't find funny. Maybe that's because I live off of a breed of sarcasm myself. But it's like I couldn't connect with those characters because of all of the jarring weirdnesses that game had. You know what I mean? Like, it lacked polish, it lacked consistency, and it lacked writing that engaged me. Brothers has no writing. Yeah, that's true, but it still has a story, right? And that story is conveyed through emotion. This game had none of that. It just had dialogue that I didn't find particularly interesting, and at one point a little bit offensive. So it's like, I don't know. The offensive point in the dialogue that I was referring to was the scene when he's building the house and he's like lying down and his friend Liz comes up and basically says, "Oh, you know, people who don't have mental disorders don't get it." It's literally what she says to him, and because he's complaining about his wife. He's like, "Oh, you know, she's so odd sometimes." It's like, "Well, you just don't get it." I found that quite offensive, actually. And my girlfriend was like, "Okay, I'm just like gonna not pay attention for like 20 minutes." So
Yeah.
it's like, I feel like I just read a third-party comment on Tumblr at that point. And
I
that
started running over the rabbit again.
I need a gif of just like a car driving back and forth over a little rabbit. I don't know. What's our verdict here? Like, I think if you can wrap your head around an awful control scheme and get this game for about $2, I wouldn't say it's too bad, but like,
I'd play it if somebody gave it to me for free.
which is what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel terrible, but at the same time I kind of don't, because you shredded Brothers, Lewis.
Yeah.
So I really like bits of it, right? I really, really, really liked the end. I think the ending was like, okay, that was a feel-good movie, and then it just threw the sarcastic comment, which like knocked it out the window, sent it to the moon. You know, like it's just
Bang, zoom straight to the moon.
It's like, thanks for hitting my opinion on this game with a hammer. And the game said it itself, right? It just, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you know, if you like the stop reading chat.
All right, I'll stop reading chat.
I'm just looking at, I'm like watching things pop. Like, he's reading chat. But it's like, go ahead, you can read chat. It's fine. But it's like, it's really difficult to take a story and be like, okay, what's enjoyable and what is an enjoyable thing to experience, right? Like, how important is control? Well, if control isn't important, then make a Telltale game.
And that's the thing. I thought, like, Telltale's actually a very interesting comparison, because I remember playing this not too terribly after a Telltale game I had played, and yeah, that's not a bad comparison. They both rely heavily on the writing. They both have some control issues, mostly connected to a point-and-click style. I definitely would say To the Moon is a point-and-click game.
I think if To the Moon was just a flat piece of decent-looking artwork that did not use the RPG Maker engine, I might have actually enjoyed it a little bit more, believe it or not. Because what I couldn't handle was the thought, oh, this is a top-down game that I'm supposed to be able to control with the arrow keys, which was like, oh, I'm standing on ice. Like, I'm skating. You know what I mean? It's like, if they'd made this a point-and-click game, which is what I feel like it wanted to be, I would have known what I was getting into and been like, okay, this is going to be a point-and-click game. And then I wouldn't have had to deal with that shitty minigame sequence at the end where you have to dodge the spikes. Which,
yeah,
I wouldn't have made it even that far. I probably wouldn't have even made it into the mansion if I didn't have to play through this.
I guess. I mean, I think that really just comes down to, I think we can agree that the main thing that the game wanted you to take away from it was the writing, the story. And it seems like the answer is it either works for you or it doesn't. I mean, it worked really well for me. It didn't work at all for you, and
If
you know,
Watts wasn't there, I probably would have taken more away.
I think if Watts wasn't there, you wouldn't have liked Eve as much. You wouldn't have liked.
She was okay. If Watts was a good character, if either of them were really engaging or good characters, I probably would have enjoyed the game a lot more.
I thought they were engaging because they played off of each other. I mean, any of them in isolation wouldn't have been interesting, but it was the fact that they didn't really get along that made them interesting.
It is the contrast between characters, I think, that does make them interesting. But having said that, contrasting two characters that are boring aside one another to try to make them interesting, you could have still made them both a little bit more interesting. You could have made them both a little bit more pleasant or unpleasant or whatever, but they just uninspired.
I'm going to use Firewatch as a brief example here. I haven't finished Firewatch and I haven't played much of it, but I've watched a good amount of it. Those are characters that play off of each other, that are different characters that play off of it and make it interesting. That is good writing. Whether Firewatch ends well or not, I don't know. I haven't finished that game yet. I want to do an episode on that, by the way. We need to do that. But it's just the writing to me didn't suit the tone, and I think that's what killed it. It was just them attempting to write two characters that played off each other well. I don't know what the writer of this game or the creator, I can't remember his name, Reeves, I think is the name that he goes by.
Kangao.
Kangao, that was
But
it.
yeah, he also goes by Reeves.
Yeah. I don't know what his writing experience is, but I'm curious to see what he does in the future. You know, that's actually what I end with this game. It's like, if he picks up a better engine, if he starts using a version of RPG Maker that isn't archaic and ancient, some of the pixel art was good, and I would really like to see what he does in the future. I mean, he has interesting ideas, but maybe he should try either a different form of media or a different style of game. Maybe just go full on into the point and click. I think that might actually be better.
Don't use RPG Maker XP for your next game.
Don't use an engine from 1999. That's a terrible idea. You know, I don't actually know exactly when RPG Maker XP came out, but I assume it was somewhere around
the turn of the millennia.
Around the time Windows XP came out, which is probably around 2000, 2002. Like, come on.
All right. So maybe should we wrap up our thoughts individually about the game?
Let's start with Fox.
Well, I mean, as I sort of stated earlier, overall, I did have a positive experience with the game. I felt, and I went into a little bit of detail with it, it did have a couple of flaws and a couple things that took me out of it. But there are quality moments of writing that I really appreciated. And I did appreciate some of the detail that was put into the storytelling that you sort of had to look in and get for yourself. But ultimately, the gameplay and, you know, some of the dumber moments in the story, it made it the kind of game I wouldn't have played if it hadn't been free for me. Basically, if you just given it to me, which is sort of what happened, I would have played it. Other than that, not a chance.
My full-on thoughts on the game was it was a more or less interesting-ish story by the end, but the first half just bogged it down, and there was a number of unanswered questions to do with themes that I think are very sensitive, and if they had handled those themes better and seemed less like a underclassed forum on the internet, I think it would have been better. I think the writing was a little bit off and weird, and I don't think the tones collided particularly well. The ending was adorable, though. I'll give it that. So that's kind of all I really have to say. I would be interested to see other things that this creator would make later down the line. Maybe even more RPG Maker games. Just please, for the love of God, don't use RPG Maker XP. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, use the newest iteration. Use VX Ace. Use something better.
Ace is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I have Ace. I got it on Steam sales. It's good.
No,
but,
I've messed around with demos from there, from various indie sites. And Lewis, just ignore our opinions and just say what you have to say.
I really liked the game. I felt like the writing really held up. That it told a very interesting story. It knew what it wanted to do, what emotion it wanted to convey, did a good job of conveying that emotion. And while there were some issues in terms of gameplay, I thought it was a really enjoyable experience, and I personally recommend it.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not at full price, but it goes on sale regularly enough that, yeah, pick it up.
I think I got it for $1.50. So
I gave it to you, so
no, but I bought it for my girlfriend a little later, so that I could play it on her laptop because I didn't want to sign into my Steam account on her computer. Anyways, different story. Steam's a pain. Yeah, no, I ended up buying it. But it has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. Last time I checked, it is a very highly recommended game. I don't think
Maybe we're just curmudgeonly.
maybe we've just played a lot of video games. I mean, maybe the internet's right. Maybe we just don't get it. I don't know.
I mean, real quick before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I would like to mention real quick that there is a direct sequel. I mean, there was like a two-part kind of mini-sode thing that's free DLC and kind of a spin-off game called A Bird Story, but those weren't really true sequels. But he is working on one. It's supposed to come out kind of at the end of the year. What to you would be like the big thing he should change to make Finding Paradise really good for you?
Engine.
I would just say make the world easier to traverse. Try and work on the art style. Maybe make the paths more direct because they were very blotchy, and I had a horrendous time traversing the world. Also, the point and click areas that get very pixel hunty are painful to play at times. And there was multiple times when I was just walking around in a room in circles going, what am I supposed to click on? Because there were times when I didn't even need to click on something. I just needed to walk past something at the right angle to trigger the memento so that I could
The flag or whatever.
yeah, go back in time. And it's like, well, I didn't even know I could go there because that area, like, world navigation,
I think
and general direction of level design. If you're gonna go with this type of game and controls, obviously, engine, exactly what PaganFawks just said.
engine and aesthetic, I think, is where I put it.
Yeah. As I said, I liked the end of the game. I felt it was a bit long. It kind of dragged on. I didn't like the controls. I didn't like the writing in particular. But the overall plot is interesting. But in a nicer package, I would have loved it, I think. And that's all I really have to say.
And I guess my final thoughts were, yeah, I really like the story, and everything else that was wrong didn't distract from it for me. But I guess it's just not something that everyone can look past.
No, it's all about individual opinion and what you can tolerate, right? So you can tolerate, some more of those gameplay issues because you like the story. For me, they distract from it a little bit, but it doesn't make it intolerable. And Greg, you're just angry face, just angry.
I think that, like, question. LRFLEW, you said that you played it on an airplane.
Yeah,
Would you have made it through if you weren't on an airplane?
probably. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Because
I mean, I played through it last night, and
True.
like there was a point where I was like, I really should pause and take a break. I'll just go a little bit longer, and next thing I know, I've finished.
Yeah, it's only 4 hours, so
Yeah.
it's kind of how I feel about a lot of Telltale games. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's just that was just an interesting thought. It's like, because I feel like if I was on a plane and I had nothing else to do and the only thing playing was Minions, I would love this game.
Yeah.
If like
That
my
was
only
pretty
movie
good.
option on a plane was Minions, I would adore it.
Real quick, I actually do want to ask.
Yeah.
Did you play it in one sitting?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Because that's like the way to play it. Like if you're gonna play it, don't try to break it up into 2 or 3 chunks. Play it as a single chunk. It's only 4 hours.
I paused it briefly around the beta blocker section when you first encounter his destroyed memory, to watch a little bit of Hell's Kitchen because I was so aggravated. But then I went back to it. So yeah, no, I didn't stop for much really. So James, did you play it in one sitting?
No, I played it in like 2 or 3 sittings.
Yeah.
The only reason for that is because I primarily worked like early mornings, which means my attention span for that game was low. Like I could only play for an hour or so at a time before I was like, all right, I gotta do something else. I gotta sleep. I gotta do something.
Yeah.
Because I mean, while it wasn't horrible, it wasn't particularly engaging for me either.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, anyways, I think we should wrap up now. Seems about time.
All right.
So, we're gonna start down with PaganFawks. Do you have anything you would like to promote or shout out, or places people could find you on the internet? Feel free to plug anything. I
Yeah,
don't care.
you can. I feel free to go ahead and sub to me. I'm primarily a Dark Souls streamer, so I mean, if that's your game, find me as Pagan Fox, PAGANFAWKS, not what it says next to my name, or this side. This is wrong.
So follow you on Twitch.
Yeah, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. You can also find me as Mad Fox over on YouTube, and I just upload PvP videos there. So
Okay.
that's what I'm gonna plug. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Lewis, yourself? Anything you'd like to promote, or should we just wait to see you here next month?
I don't have much I want to promote, but I will go ahead and just say,
How about
go ahead and follow me. I may
Link your
start
game.
streaming kind of April-ish.
Post a
Oh,
link
my
to your
game?
Yeah, sure, do that.
I'd have to hunt down a link
Well,
real quick.
you made a game in a game jam recently, which was quite fun, which I think you guys should all go take a look at.
Yeah. Well, I could grab it.
Okay, well, I am blind. My name's Greg. Most of you probably know me. This is my Twitch channel that the show's aired on. I stream 6 days a week, way too much. A lot of Roller Coaster Tycoon and other management games. And this is just a show that we run once a month. And if you would like to get other episodes of this show, you can go to projectstorymode.com. The link is on the screen right now, or you can follow us on Twitter at RealStoryMode. I tend to retweet the StoryMode tweets, so if you follow me on Twitter already, I am at BlindiRL. You can find all of the StoryMode stuff pretty easily. If you go to the website, there are SoundCloud links, YouTube links, VOD links, basically anything. I don't know if we're on iTunes yet. We're trying to get on iTunes. I don't know. Who uses iTunes? What is that? Anyways, we're not going to do a post-game show again today, just because it's time, and owning games, and I have a lot of things I need to do today. So I would like to thank everybody who tuned in today. You guys are all absolutely fantastic, and this is Story Mode, episode 3. Go watch the other 2 episodes. You guys have a nice night.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
See ya.